At the I was at the PFS annual conference yesterday down in London, and you're right, Andrew. The sun was beaming down over the capital. It's glorious.
That's it. That's why us Southerners don't move to Scotland all too often. We like the warmth too much. It's too cold up there for us. Thank you very much for joining us again today, which no doubt will be another great webinar with the guys over at Aspen. I always like to kick things off on time to give these guys plenty of time to go through their presentation. So again, we plan for today's webinar to run for the full hour. Please make most of your time with Andrew and Francis today. If you do have any questions, do pop it in the chat box, or if you want to be a little bit more anonymous, there's a Q&A section as well that will send a message directly to us. We'll answer that one of two ways. We'll either address it on the webinar live or we'll type out response back to you. But either way, please do ask as many questions as you can. We do have a couple of polls as always, so please do get involved with our polls today. Feedback is so important to us. When you exit the webinar, there will be a little bit of a feedback form. Please give us your feedback on today's webinar. It's the only way we can improve how we deliver our content to you wonderful people every single week. So let's kick things off when everything starts working. So without going into too much detail, we are the Financial Planning Club. We provide direct support to business owners throughout the UK. You could be looking at growth, operations, tech, people and culture. Either way, we are here to support your business thrive throughout the year. And most certainly, we create 3-year business plans. We break that down into 12-month roadmaps and again into 90-day sprints, everything being held accountable every step of the way, you, us, and everybody in between. Some see us as a non-exec direct, some use us as an agony aunt, but either way, we're there to support you and your business. We're currently running, you may have seen it on socials, Experience the Club. So at the moment, we've got 25 business owners on a bit of a 6-week journey with us. Fully supported and funded by Tatton Investment Management. 6-week, every week we meet on a Monday and we go for a particular part of your business. It's been really good. We're about 3-4 weeks in now and we're getting some very good feedback from that. So we are running another Experience the Club in January. So if you are interested in exploring what we can do for you and your business, on the feedback form, there will be a little bit of a section that says, tell me more about Experience the Club, and we will send you some details. As you know, outside of what we do for business owners, we like to provide a community that works for everybody within our profession. From our WhatsApp groups, there's about 1,400 people now across our WhatsApp groups, which is amazing, broken down into separate individual groups, because if you was all in one group, that'd be absolute carnage. We've got financial advisors, business owners, paraplanners, ops managers. So a couple of separate WhatsApp groups for you to get involved with. Our webinars, expert-led, highly practical and CPD accredited. Face-to-face events, you'll see what we've got coming up. Got the last event of the year. We've been London, Leeds and a few other places this year. So we've got one more that we're bringing to Birmingham. I'll cover that off in a second. Our podcast is great. You can listen to our podcast. I think, Andrew, you've been on the podcast, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
Yes, you have. Yes, you have indeed. So you can listen to Andrew's podcast on any platform, your Spotify, your Amazon, wherever you listen to your podcast these days. We are there. And we run quarterly CEO roundtables as well. So real high-level discussions with decision makers on what's affecting their business in that quarter. As I mentioned, we are on tour. We're in Birmingham a couple of weeks from now, Friday the 28th of November. We've done Leeds last month, so we're heading to Birmingham, which is our last event of the year. To give you a bit of an insight as to what that looks like, we're kicking things off with a personal motivators session, enabling you to really rediscover your why. We then look at strategies to win and retain clients across multiple generations. I think, Francis, you were at our Leeds event, wasn't you?
Yeah, I was there, and I'll be there again in Birmingham.
There again in Birmingham, great stuff. And we finish off the day with a session around building a client referral scheme that actually works. So it's a really sort of collaborative, really interactive. Sitting and listening at our events is simply not possible. We do like to get everybody involved throughout the day. You do get 5 hours of CPD. and it is completely free to attend. So again, on the feedback form, there'll be a little bit of a section that says, do you want to hear more about our event? If you are in the area or can commute to Birmingham, tick yes, and we'll send you some details. We've got a couple of webinars coming up that I just want to bring to your attention. Friday the 5th of December, I believe. These are the last two webinars of the year. We're with Pilot. So I don't know if you know much about Pilot, but it's a brand new tech that's come to the market. It's a back office system that's built by advisors for advisors. So we're going to look at the real sort of time saving exercise, cost saving exercise. So if you don't know too much about Pilot, or if you want to see what their tech is doing and how it is innovating the back office space, then do register for that particular webinar. As always, we're going to end the year with Way Trustees. Post-budget, look, what does good estate planning look like post-budget, and how Consumer Duty is shaping advice? I think everybody's on edge about what's going to happen in the budget. So this is going to be a really good webinar to stay in touch and informed with what is going on. So again, that's on the 11th of December. Strangely, a Thursday, which is interesting. That throws me off my Friday webinar spin. But look, we'll go with that for the time being. I think it might be because we've got our Christmas do on Friday the 12th. I think we're all going into London. So that could be the reason why. As always, we couldn't do what we do without the wonderful support of our collaborators within the club. You know, we run consultancy for business owners, but it's these firms that add direct support to each and every one of our club members as well. So we've got some really cool firms working with us, from tech to compliance to platforms to DFMs to absolutely everything. We've got a firm that can support your business in one way or another. So a huge thank you and a well-deserved shout out to everybody collaborating with the club. You do play a vital part of our club members' journey. So that brings us to today. Today we're joined by Aspen with Andrew Spence, founder and chief executive, and Francis Walker, who is the regional director. Andrew founded Aspen in 2019 to help drive the wealth management industry forward, and is now one of the fastest growing providers in managed portfolios in the UK. Francis works closely with financial planners across the country, helping them bring Aspen's investment proposition to life and deliver outstanding client income. So as many of you may remember, when you registered for the webinar, we did ask you a couple of questions. So we do like to pull that information together and share that back to you all. Most people are still using tools like Dynamic Planner and De facto for risk, but there's a growing demand to connect investments more closely to real life goals, which I think we're seeing across the industry as well. Advisors are clearly moving towards flexible goal-based frameworks, focusing less on labels and more on helping clients reach meaningful outcomes. Guys, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us again. What you're seeing here, is that what you're hearing across the industry as well, would you say?
Yeah, I think intuitively it makes sense. Obviously, we've lived in a world in the last sort of 10, 15 years where we've, especially with the growth of model portfolios, where risk profiling has really been the risk score has been the real guide and the real focus. And I think it doesn't align very well with the client conversations. And so yeah, we're going to dive into it, and we'll dive into one of the issues of trying to be more goals based is making sure that you have the investment solutions that kind of deal with that and can cater for that, because we've lived in a world where we live in a risk profiled world, and we have risk profiled portfolios, and it's kind of risk profile 4, model portfolio 4, and it's just trying to evolve that a little bit. So Francis, any observations from your perspective?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, it's something, as we'll discuss today, that we've been talking about for many years. Andrew's been talking about for many years at Aspen. But certainly recently, we've seen conversations surrounding risk profiling and a move towards goal-based investing increase. So we'll dive into some of the detail as we go through the session this morning.
Smashing. Good stuff, guys. I will stop sharing my screen. You've got full permissions to share your slides, and I'm looking forward to this session. It'll be good.
Yeah, thank you, Liam. Thank you for the warm introduction, and to everyone that's joined us on the call this morning. I must plug the Leeds event was very good, and I am looking forward to seeing everyone at the Birmingham event too. As Lee's mentioned, I'm Francis Walker, Regional Director here at Aspen, responsible for looking after all our financial planning partners across the North. And I'm delighted to be joined by our founder and Chief Executive Officer, Andrew Spence. This is what Andrew and I are discussing this morning. The agenda sort of covers who Aspen are, the role risk profiling plays within the advice process, and the evolution that we're seeing towards goals-based investing. Now, Andrew and I plan to keep this a conversational session. And as Lee's mentioned, we will be running 3 polls for you to answer throughout. We've also allowed time at the end for a Q&A, but please do submit questions in the chat functionality and I'll pick them up where appropriate as we go. We're very grateful to the Financial Planning Club for giving us this platform to talk on the subject today, because at Aspen, as I mentioned, we've seen recently an increase in the conversations we're having around goal-based investing. But this isn't necessarily a new concept, is it, Andrew? It's something that you've been talking about for many years now.
Yeah, it was part of the reason that Aspen was born in the first place, and as I said, intuitively, I feel that clients have goals and objectives and dreams, and not a risk profile. So, I understand and appreciate that, the risk profiling framework and process is part of things, and it's a regulatory requirement. But it's really how we kind of bridge the two of, client objectives and the risk profiling process. And that's what we'll kind of discuss today. So yeah, I'll pick things up from here. Thanks, Lee and Francis, for those intros. So I'm just gonna start just briefly, for those that aren't aware, just a little bit about Aspen for a couple of minutes. So we have, MPS is a very competitive market. We do MPS only. We look to be absolute specialists in that field. And when you're entering an existing market, which we did 4 or 5 years ago, your product or service can't just be a little bit better than others. Otherwise, it's quite fair that people would just use the incumbents. You need to be doing something usefully different. And so Aspen has 4 uniques in our business. The first, which is particularly applicable to today, is that we have the most comprehensive range of portfolios on the market. By the way, just to check, can you see my screen okay, Francis?
Yes, yeah, we can, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely fine, mate.
Grand. So yeah, we have the most comprehensive range of portfolios on the market. And by that, I don't mean an endless kind of risk range. We provide a complete toolkit of, the risk range, sort of 1 to 5, 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, but also across the style of core, passive plus, income, sustainable, and multi-strategy. But we also pioneered the concept of satellite portfolios, which is really, a key part of kind of goal-based investing. If you're looking for capital preservation strategies, income strategies, or high growth strategies, we've kind of got that sort of complete toolkit. Second is the efficiency of how we deliver this, and then we will dip into that in terms of the technology that we provide to make the whole process nice and seamless, and getting a nice sort of suitability kind of output from that. Thirdly, and this is a super big one for us, is the importance of service. Any firms that work with us can see us as really part of their business on the investment side. So anything that they need in terms of investment support, we are here to do that, not just simply the provider of a product. And then finally is our ability to be nimble, and this is really important as the world evolves, and evolves at a pace, and not just the investment products that we have, but the technology that we have, the service that we provide, and just kind of keeping on the front foot of everything. We're not investing for the last 10 years; we're investing for the next 10 years, and our ability to focus on that is an important one. For example, 3 or 4 years ago, when interest rates rose from 0% to 5%, we pretty quickly brought out our Cash Plus portfolio and our Gilts portfolio within a couple of months of that being clearly an opportunity that people want to have access to. And some of our bigger peers. Took a couple of years to bring that out. So, those are our four uniques. And as I say, we're absolute MPS specialists and looking to be best in class in that field. We work with a number of networks, a number of risk profiling firms, a number of research systems. There's lots of stuff and software out there these days, and then a number of strategic partners, including the wonderful Financial Planning Club that we're joined with today. So we've really enjoyed the collaboration with the Financial Planning Club in 2025, and looking forward to that next year as well. So on to the meat of things today, goals-based in investing. And I think what we'll do is we'll start with a poll here before I kind of dip into more of a conversational piece on things. So I'll just stop sharing for a moment if we could do the first poll.
Yeah, what we're really keen to find out from you all this morning is how useful you consider risk profiling to be in the advice process. So there are four answers to give there. It works well, and I follow it closely. It's a useful guiding light, but I often make changes from it. It's just a tick box exercise, what we need to do. And finally, it's very awkward for clients and has no bearing on how they should be invested. It's interesting to see those results start coming through. It looks like it's point 2 is the favourite at the moment. We'll pause just for a while, just let some more answers.
Are you noticing a bit of a change in how firms approach risk profiling, sort of over the past few years? Would you say?
There's a keenness to evolve, but we're very prescribed by the providers of risk profiling software and the regulator. And so, I've done a few posts and things on LinkedIn about this, and I get a wall of messages from financial planners and our side on the investment side on this topic. And there's clearly frustration about how the process is done at the moment, but it needs a collective industry evolution. We can't just sort of jump up and down about it. So it's interesting to see how that evolves. But it's interesting, the poll is useful here. And I was interested to see what the outcome would be of this. It's definitely skewed to the higher, the top end there. There's a sense here that risk profiling as it's done at the moment is not too bad from a financial planning perspective. The main one that's winning here is it's a useful guiding light, but I often make changes from it. So I would have expected that to be probably the main one. I do sometimes hear people mention points 3 and 4 there, but it's interesting to see. Obviously, some people think, and quite fairly, that it works really well, and follow closely to it. So, but I think unsurprising that the second option there is probably the most popular, and that's probably where we sit. We see it as somewhat of a useful guiding light, but it's like, right, we've done that. Now let's really focus on what are the goals and objectives here, and the education piece. So yeah.
So would you say that's off the back of the risk profiling output doesn't really match what the conversation was had with the client? Would you say the conversation, the output seems to be a little bit misaligned?
So yeah, I mean, you can have a conversation with someone, and we'll kind of go into this in terms of what is one's goals. There might be short-term goals, there might be medium-term goals, and there might be long-term goals. And what a risk profile often does, it doesn't deal with these these specific time horizons and these objectives. It considers everything as one. And so and if you take someone that's just looking at their pension, for example, and they're 40 years old, they've got 25 years left of their pension, and they fill out the risk profile questionnaire, and they come out at 3 out of 7. We've now got to go through an education piece of getting that 3 up to a 6 or a 7, because we know that they need to be invested largely in equities. And so it's then all about the education piece. So the risk profile is useful to at least get a feel for where someone sits. And almost to see how much do we have to educate this client on the importance of taking risk. I think the word's used far too much in the industry, but the importance of being in equities, and we need to do a big education piece here. But then from a compliance point of view, the financial planner is in a slightly tricky spot that they have to really evidence that, yes, they've come out a 3, but we've had this conversation and these are all the things we talked about, and now we're a 6 or a 7 because that's where that's where we should be. Because risk profiling is the 3 things of risk tolerance, risk capacity, and importantly, risk required to achieve your objectives. And so, if someone's 40 years old and it's their pension pot, their risk required to achieve their long-term objectives in retirement requires them to take more risk, even if their risk tolerance is low. And so it's that all-encompassing piece, which is so that's why I am probably in camp 2 with the poll, that it is a useful guiding light to frame a conversation, but there's more needing done kind of from there.
Matthew makes an interesting comment, doesn't he? Was you going to pick that up, Francis? Yeah.
I was just going to touch on that. Actually, it does make an interesting point, and it kind of ties into some of the stuff you were saying there, Andrew. Can others on the call?
Yeah, people can see that chat. Yeah, absolutely.
It's quite a long comment, so I was going to read it all out.
But the fact that it's still mandated by the regulators, who then hate to see anybody amend that, it's an interesting comment, isn't it?
Yeah,
it is, and we're obviously completely understand and know it. From the investment side and some of our frustrations with the risk profiling process from our side, but I'm always super interested to hear more about. I did used to have clients. I did used to do the risk profiling process. It was always a little bit of an awkward one, and you had to kind of guide them to various spots. But you're right. Obviously, the regulator needs to kind of, I think, have a relook at this in terms of how prescriptive one needs to be on this, and how comfortable we can be with regard to, okay, a questionnaire is completed, and the output of that is something that we are able to change relatively easily following a discussion. There's also, I think it would be better, and I think risk profiling firms need to do more on this in terms of an education piece before the risk profile is completed, because it's all very well for us in the industry. We've become very familiar with terminology, risk, the importance of being invested in these sorts of things. But as we know, people not in the industry are very inexperienced and unknowledgeable about investing in things. And so I think before one completes a risk profile, I think there should be an education piece. Then the risk profile is completed, and then we need to see if we need to make any adjustments to that. And I think that would mean that there would be less misalignment between the risk profile and where they need to be if there was more of an education piece at the start. Yeah,
100%. Just thought I'd share the results for all to see. But no, that was good.
Cool. So yeah, I would just have so the first sort of topic that we're gonna just discuss a little bit was on just bring it back up. It was on why was risk profiling first created, and has it become too much of a crutch or too much of a kind of focus in the planning process? Because I don't think many clients sort of arrive or say, oh, I think I'm a risk profile 7, do you have anything suitable for me? That tends to not be how the conversation goes. It's more, these are my circumstances, and these are this is the money that I have, and these are my goals, and this is what I want to achieve, and we kind of need to go from there. So starting with risk profiling as opposed to goals, can be a little bit of a challenge. And so, yeah, just a 5-minute discussion on this topic. I think we're gonna start with.
Yeah, I'd be interested, Andrew. Obviously, we work with a lot of the risk profiling tools, right? And we see the questions that they ask of clients, and be interested. Who are the sort of main risk profiling tools, and how do they differ from each other in terms of the scores and the questions that they do ask clients?
Yeah, so the main ones are Dynamic Planner, eValue, Oxford Risk, Phonometrica, Synoptic, which I've not really come across that much. I think there's one or two others. There's around 6 kind of main ones. I think Dynamic Planner de facto probably the main, followed by eValue, followed by Oxford Risk. I think at the top 4. What I always find really odd is on some of our peers' fact sheets, you see on the bottom left-hand corner this sort of badges of risk, and there's like a 3 out of 5, 4 out of 7, there's 5 out of 10, and a 3.2. And you got to put yourself in the client's shoes. They're going to see that and they're going to think, I have absolutely no idea what that means. So that when I see that, I'm just like, it's just not consumer friendly. The other thing is, we had a advisor client the other day who's changing from one risk profile provider to another, and a client was a 6 out of 10 with one provider, and then filled out a new set of questions. Then we're a 9 out of 10 with the other provider, and the client's like, oh, but I don't feel like I've gone up 3 notches in risk.
Yeah.
And the person needs to say, you've not. It's just how that provider scores risk. Clearly, this is nonsense. Clearly, this makes no sense to anyone whatsoever. And it shows from our investment technical perspective and from an advice planning perspective, there is something structurally wrong with this whole risk profiling process.
Yeah.
Within the funds universe, we have a scale called the SRRI. And so all funds are scored 1 to 7. And they have the same methodology of scoring. So that is a useful thing. So everyone could kind of benchmark and compare off that. Because we have all these risk profiling agencies and they all rate and score and their methodology is different, we have this inconsistency in scoring. And so we find it very frustrating from an investment perspective, and we have to pay an awful lot of money to all these providers for this risk profiling experience. And from a client perspective, it's fine if you're just using one provider and you've become familiar with that, and that's fine. But the fact sheets and moving providers creates a challenge. So I have an issue with how the whole thing is scored, and there needs to be a standard. So this is where it needs to come from the regulator, in my opinion, because the risk profiling agencies are not going to change because it's not in their commercial interest to change. So the regulator needs to create a standardization of risk. And I think that would really help from our perspective and from the client's perspective, just kind of, okay, we've got this base level that we now work off.
And we've already touched on a little bit of this already, Andrew and Lee, and Matthew touched on it slightly in his comments, but there are differences within the risk profiling, but there are some benefits that risk profiling can bring, right? And to start that conversation, have that conversation about risk, what are some of the benefits that we see?
Yeah, so like the poll, and that's why it was really interesting to do polls. I am probably in camp too, because it does at least help with the conversation. If someone, like I said, if someone fills out a questionnaire, it's their pension, they've got 25 years, and their view is that they have a relatively low tolerance to risk. From a financial planning perspective, we need to say, okay, we really need to discuss and educate here on that. Equally, if someone is, has a shorter term goal for their investments and they've come out really high risk, we need to do an education piece there to kind of bring them down. So it is useful in that respect as a starting point for discussion and debate and education. And I suppose once we've landed on that, it is a useful guiding light for the umbrella of assets that we are looking at. But I view it as a guiding light in my perspective. I think that's where it should be. It was created initially because back when I started nearly 20 years ago in the industry, we didn't have risk profile. When I had clients, I was with a wealth manager, and so it really was a discussion-based thing. But you would see quite a lot of disparity between, investment managers or financial planners that might have similar clients, but would end up in quite different portfolios. So it did create a bit more consistency across firms, across how a client would be treated, depending on who's dealing with that. So I think it does bring some value in that respect for a little bit more consistency and outcomes. But I think the guiding light point is probably where it should be, and the regulators should allow flexibility as long as evidenced to move off that.
Definitely. I noticed somebody has got their hand up. Philip's got his hand up. So Philip, if you've got a question, please do let us know. It's not often we bring people and there we go. I think the hand's gone down. Sometimes it is a mistake. Some people don't realise their hand's up. Last thing we need is turning your camera on and go, Philip, the floor's yours. Off you go.
That might have encouraged Kevin's question, which has just popped up in the chat. Actually, I'll read it out for you, Andrew. So, following on from your example of pension savers not understanding the level of risk they need to take to achieve their retirement goals, do you see workplace schemes, that's interesting, with more expertise at the helm taking more risk than personal savers?
Yeah, quite possibly. Yeah, I think there, with that there is that more professional feel in terms of how this should be managed. So yeah, I think quite possibly. I think that's a fair assessment, just because of that professional bit at the outset. So yeah, I do. Yeah.
So it's clear from the way people were voting and from the conversation that we've had there that there is use in the risk profiling, certainly from an initial conversation, and then there's lots to do from an advisor's perspective in terms of educating the client then on risk versus reward, and actually the type of risk that they may need to take to achieve their goals, to achieve their desired outcomes. And I guess that actually leads us nicely into this discussion topic 2, Andrew. So the discussion topic 2 is all about now goals-based investing. So what is it? What actually is it, and how can it be effectively implemented? So to kick us off into this week, we do have a second poll to run. Do you want to fire that one up, please, Lee?
It's live. There we go.
And whilst we're waiting for those answers to come back, Andrew, is there anything else that you would like to add on from the risk profiling before we jump into the goals base?
No, I think we've touched on a few areas there. I think it's quite clear. As I said, I get a lot of comms on LinkedIn when this topic's brought up. That there are. I don't think people think that the current way of doing things is completely wrong. But I'd certainly, from our peers in investment management, we are very frustrated with the process, and I think financial planners generally feel like it's a bit too prescriptive, and they would prefer the ability to have some flexibility off that without worrying about going from that risk. I think that seems to be where people are landing. Yeah. So this question, so which client goals do you most commonly plan for? So retirement planning, accumulation, retirement planning, decumulation, lifestyle goals, wealth protection strategies, wealth accumulation strategies. So yeah, a lot are taking the retirement pot. So we've got 13 in the retirement pot, and then there's other things there. I think what's interesting with this is it's quite broad based in terms of the goals that people have, and it's not all about wealth accumulation or retirement or just decumulation strategies. There are a wide variety of goals here, and this is what I expected to see. I expected to see it kind of weighted towards retirement planning strategies, but that actually there's a number of other goals that we need to consider. So I'll just share my screen again.
Actually, do you see things, and do you see things like lifestyle goals? Would you say they're secondary to retirement conversations?
I mean, it's difficult for me to say because I'm not in the conversations. So that's one perhaps a little bit more for financial planners more broadly. I think retirement planning still is the lion's share of goals, whether that's accumulation or decumulation of it. It's the biggest pots generally of people's wealth is their pension pot. And obviously most of the wealth is in 55 years plus. So that's where the focus is. But it's not exclusively that. But I would say 50% of 50 to 60% of assets are in the retirement piece, even a little bit more actually, whether it's accumulation or decumulation.
Yeah. So just briefly, I just want to share the results back to the audience so they can see where everybody was casting their votes to see if they were in similar boats to others before you kick off on your next set of slides. We've not had any other questions. We've had one other question come in, but I'm gonna bring that up towards the end as well. So we just give you time to get through the presentation, mate. All right.
Thanks, Lee. Grand. Okay. So next section is what are the common goals kind of clients have. So first, we look at the sort of target market. So we've got holistic financial planning. This is obviously the most common. You need to cater for a wide range of objectives and goals, and quite often one or more investment solutions may be necessary. So that's the most common sort of target market type for planning businesses. Then we have the subsets of retirees, typically a little bit more risk averse, varying needs in terms of income, sustainability of growth, and legacy. And here, obviously, we need to have a specific central retirement proposition that is available. We also have wealthy clients, so high net worth, ultra high net worth, typically more complex needs, but more tax structuring, varying goals, varying time horizons. So a pure sort of passive solution may not be suitable in that particular case. Mass affluent, so higher volume of clients, probably requires a simple, more scalable solution for the long term. And then we have the accumulators, so on a growth mindset, on a journey. You really want to minimize costs here in terms of the compounding of that growth. So these are the sort of typical types of client that we have. And so for me, the easiest way to bucket all the range of goals and objectives that people have is time horizon based. Time horizon is fundamentally the most important part of choosing an investment solution. You can have a goal, but really that goal can be bucketed into, okay, is this a short-term goal, a medium-term goal, or a long-term goal? So short-term, 0 to 3 years is the focus here is liquidity, stability, and immediate kind of needs for this money. So that might be an emergency fund, paying off debt, save for a near-term purchase, perhaps a holiday or something like that. Excess cash or income that they just sort of have, but want that to kind of stay liquid. Or, again, planning for something, short-term, a wedding or holiday. We then have medium-term goals, which can be sort of 3 to 7 years or 3 to 10 years. So here we want some growth, really probably inflation-protected growth for this bucket, typically moderate risk, and a balance between accessibility of that money and returns are the focus here. So perhaps saving for a house deposit for yourself or for children in sort of 7 to 10 years' time, perhaps funding children's education in the future, perhaps aspiration to upgrade to a bigger property, or just generally the inflation proofing of wealth. Because as we all know in this industry, inflation, if you just sit with money in the bank or under the bed, that is generally more risky than being invested because your money gets eroded by inflation. And then finally is that longer term nature. So wealth accumulation, legacy, and financial independence are the focus here. So that's retirement planning in the accumulation phase, financial independence, long-term philanthropy or donations, legacy and estate planning, or just generally the long-term appreciation of wealth. So really any goal can be put into one of these three camps. So that makes it much simpler for us to then find a suitable investment home. So for that short term, the investment approach, high liquidity, low vol. So really your assets here are cash, money market funds, short dated bonds, or, some alternative strategies such as, maybe a rougher type fund or a Trojan type fund. So something that really the mandate is not losing money in any 12-month period, but really probably cash, money market funds, short dated bonds are your focus here. For that medium term, the investment approach is more of a diversified portfolio, balancing that growth and capital preservation mindset. So really a kind of traditional, low, medium or medium risk portfolio would be suitable here. And then the long-term focus here is, the investment process is really growth-orientated, perhaps tax-efficient structures that we might want to look at, and really the equity content is 80% plus in this allocation. I would say just flipping back to the short-term pot, I have seen some risk profile ones of, some, Vanguard Life Strategy, for example. I think Vanguard Life Strategy is, one of the best passive solutions on the market because I do like its domestic bias and its diversification. But the reality is it's not low risk, and even though risk profilers decide it's low risk, it's actually not, because you do have that duration element in bonds, and so I think we saw peak to trough at 20% drawdown in that strategy. So making sure you understand. Is this thing actually low risk? Because the risk profilers aren't brilliant at doing that sometimes, and basing decisions on that. So yeah, I'd say this is really the key focus on a kind of goal-based solution is looking at the time horizon. So the third topic is how can a goals-based approach be easily implemented? So this is our final poll. If we could do that, please, Lee. So what is the biggest challenge you face when implementing a goal-based strategy? So option 1 is clients struggle to articulate their goals. Option 2 is difficulty aligning portfolios with multiple goals. Lack of suitable investment products, time constraints in client meetings, or something else. So it's interesting that I'm starting to see, and I'll just discuss point 2 creep up as a popular one. Difficulty in aligning portfolios with multiple goals. So one of our frustrations and financial planning frustrations is the trickiness in a number of platforms of having multiple portfolios within one wrapper. So we are campaigning heavily for platforms to make this more available, because this would really help with goal-based investing. So it is interesting to see that difficulty aligning portfolios with multiple goals, creep in. And I think there could be some functionality elements of that. One, perhaps the lack of suitable investment products, but the other is the mechanics on platforms on doing that. The others, clients struggle to articulate their goals. So that's interesting, and lack of suitable investment products. Yeah, as I said, that's interesting. So yeah, that's sort of where I expected this to go as well.
So tech's still a big player in the game, isn't it? Really, tech enabling people to have the tech to access, and it's still a big problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
good. So
yeah,
thanks, Lee.
So time constraints, is it a problem for many people? So that's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
That's good. Do you think it is a bit operational as well? It could be an operational lag in it.
That's the feedback we have had, particularly in terms of implementing like the bucketing approach in retirement, where you have a short-term, medium, and long-term bucket. Really like the concept, but the practical implementation of that on platforms, some platforms is proving a challenge if you're using the building blocks of model portfolios. It's a bit easier if you're using just funds to do that. But if you're using model portfolios, platforms are still working on improving that functionality. I'd say half can do it well, half are still working on it.
Yeah, makes sense.
So the final stage of this, before we do 5 minutes of Q&A, is just Francis and I taking you through an example client circumstance with a few goals. So I'll just share my screen again. Just bring that up.
So am I going to get some tech surprises here, Andrew? Because every time I see the tech, it just grows arms and legs, and it just gets slicker and better every time I see it.
We might do a little sneak peek. Implementation. This comes into, a few people mentioned this in terms of products available. So one of my concerns about the MPS landscape is everyone just kind of doing variations of the same thing, which is basically one-dimensional in my view. It's like 20, 40, 60, 80, 100 in equities, and that's our toolkit. And so client needs, in my view, are two-dimensional. They are risk-based and they're objective-based, and so there can be a limitation in terms of what portfolios can do. So it's a bit like a square peg in a round hole sometimes, trying to implement the goals. And so that's why at Aspen we've tried to create the complete toolkit that allows people to have that two-dimensional approach to delivering on client goals, and we will touch on how we do that just now. So, Francis, the live case study that we are going to do for the next 10 minutes.
Yeah, right. Thanks, Andrew. So here we've got on the screen Mr. Rust. Now, it goes without saying that Mr. Rust is a fictional character. He is based on Andrew's dog and our chief happiness officer at Aspen, Rusty. But for the purpose of compliance, if Rusty is listening, this is not financial advice.
He's asleep in the corner.
Right. So it was interesting to see on one of the polls there when asked, which client goals do you most commonly plan for? The biggest answer there was retirement planning, decumulation. And if you've dialed into one of our talks previously, you may have seen us run through some scenarios where we talk about goals-based planning, investing, and we focus on retirement clients. So we thought we'd do something slightly different today and actually build a case study based on a typical scenario that you might see in an accumulation client. So Mr. Rust is 45 years old. He's got two children, age 11 and 13. For ease, we'll say he's got an emergency fund in place and he's mortgage free with no high interest debt. He's got £20,000 in his ISA with the full allowance available for him this year, £150,000 in pension and contributing £500 per month. He's a medium risk investor. And the reason why he's approached yourselves today for a bit of financial advice is because he's just had an inheritance of £100,000. So you as financial advisors have now gone out and spoken to Mr. Rust, and you've realised he's explained that he's got several goals, which when you've put into the short, medium and long-term investment time horizon buckets. So in short term, in 2 years, once his youngest has settled into secondary school, he would like to go on a meaningful holiday at a cost of £10,000. Whilst on that holiday, he'd like to carry out some home improvements, including a new kitchen at a cost of £40,000. In the medium term, he'd like the option to provide each child with £20,000 once they turn 18 as a contribution towards a house deposit or university fees. And then long term, he's got his eye on retirement in 20 years at age 65. And to do that, he needs to get a pension pot of around £950,000. So because he's got an emergency fund in place and he doesn't have any debt, let's imagine that we can apply the entire £100,000 inheritance to his investment accounts. So the purpose of this example, we'll put £50,000 into his personal account, bringing that up to £50,000, and we'll earmark that for spending in the next 2 years on that holiday and on those home improvements. We'll then use his ISA allowance, place £20,000 into his ISA, bringing that to £40,000, and we'll earmark that for his children in 5 and 7 years. And then we'll add the remaining £30,000 to his pension, bringing that to £180,000, plus the £500 that'll be going in each month, and we'll earmark that for retirement in 20 years. Now, he's a medium risk investor, so it might be fair to say that at this point that you'll put him into a medium risk portfolio, and we'll apply that across all his investment portfolios. But we're asking the question, is there a better way we can create a more tailored, more individual investment strategy that targets not only his risk appetite, but also his goals and his time horizons? So
Thanks.
Andrew and I are going to talk through that using some of the Aspen tech alongside the range of solutions we've got available.
Perfect. Thanks, Francis, for that intro. Can you see the screen of the tool here, just to check? Or are we still on?
No, we're still on the presentation.
Okay, good. I'm glad I checked. Otherwise, we've been talking about something that's completely good. Right. So can you see that now?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, great. Fab. Right. In the last 5 minutes or so, we're going to take you through that journey. So the tradition, the really simple way of doing this is, right, these are your circumstances. We've done your risk profile. You've come out medium risk. We're going to put your pension into medium risk. We're going to put your cash into medium risk, and we're all just medium risk. And we're going into a balanced portfolio. Or we can break that out a little bit and target the specific goals. And so that's what we're going to do here. We provide super simple and intuitive tech We do brand this to the firms that we work with if you wish. And so it all has the look and feel of being your proposition. You see the latest fact sheets, the latest market updates, really useful charting functionality here where you can see 50 years worth of data. You can add in market downturns, world events. You can do projections and you can do all these sorts of things. So a really nice, simple piece of kit. I'm a bit of a technophobe, so it's really important that technology is simple and easy to use. So we're going to create Mr. Rust's portfolio in the next 4 minutes. So we're going to do a guided journey. So we're going to find Mr. Rust. Here he is. And we are going to allocate the wrappers here. So Francis, if you want to just read those out.
There's £50,000 in his, £180,000 in his pension.
180,000 pension.
£50,000 in a personal account.
Yep.
And £40,000 in his ISA.
Okay, and we can add any notes around that if we wish. So 270,000 to invest here. We're now going to create the goals for this particular client. So
and what we said was that goal 1 is going to be spending. That's on home improvements and on a holiday, and that's a short-term time horizon. Goal 2 is children. That's to give them each £20,000 when they hit 18. So that's a medium-term time horizon. And the final goal there is retirement.
Someone's just got their mic on, just FYI. Great. And the final stage before we then build the portfolios is deciding on the risk. So we're actually mapped to de facto Dynamic Planner eValue. We also provide our own risk profiling software for free if that's useful. Let's say this particular client, Mr. Rust, has come out as a medium risk investor. So now we're in here in terms of building the portfolio, the final stage. So we're going to allocate the various wrappers here. So the spending pot, I think that was the individual accounts. The children's pot is the ISA, and then the retirement pot is the pension. And so now we're going to build the portfolios. So for this short-term pot, we're going to add a portfolio in here. So we've got £50,000 to spend with here. This is a short-term pot, so we want liquidity type tools. So you could use a traditional defensive portfolio. As I said in the beginning, sometimes these can be not as low risk as they might be profiled. And so it's important to be aware, is your low risk traditional portfolio actually low risk? And so that's why we created a few options that are different from the traditional low risk portfolio. We have Cash Plus, which is cash, money market funds and ultra short dated bonds, really stable return close to base rates. The gilts portfolio, short dated gilts, mostly return is CGT free. So that's yielding around 4% tax free at the moment. And our capital preservation portfolio. So that's looking for cash plus 1% or so. So let's say in this particular example, we'll go for the cash plus portfolio, and we'll put the £50,000 in there. Next is your medium-term time horizon for the children's requirements in 7 to 10 years. Here, your base case would probably be a traditional balance portfolio. So we're looking in that medium to risk balance, that sort of 60-40 type portfolio. So Aspen, we've got 5 variants of a balanced portfolio. We've got core, passive plus, income, sustainable, and multi-strategy. So really here, you'd probably be looking at a core or a passive plus solution. Satellite-wise, we have our 4 seasons portfolio, really popular. So we're looking for that sort of 7% return, but pretty stable kind of return profile. So let's just say, for example, we'll just put that one in for now. And then finally, we have the growth option, the longer term time horizon here. This is really where you're looking for that equity focused strategy, either a 80% or 100% kind of equity mandate here. So let's go for the equity focused passive plus portfolio there for the balance of how much is in here? 180, yeah. 180,000. So that is us now kind of invested as part of that. You will see that down here in the bottom left, we have gone a little bit high in terms of risk with regard to what the risk profile has been set at the 3 out of 5. Now, the 2 options here is to lower that pension pot to a growth portfolio to being around 80% equities, or to be comfortable that we have gone away from that risk profile and write notes as to the reasons why that we have made that slight adjustment up is because we've got 20-year time horizon and we are happy with that full equity content. So that's how that would work. Or you can kind of revisit the risk profiling process. So that is us now structured that. Let's just edit that to be a growth portfolio, just to bring everything nicely in line. So we'll bring that to 180,000. So you see it's now 3.1 out of 5. So we're nicely in line with that risk profile. And that's it. And you get a nice report that comes out of that I'll show you in just a second when it downloads.
And what's also probably worth mentioning at this, Andrew, when you are having conversations with clients about risk versus reward, specifically in the pension pot, which we know is a long-term pot.
Yeah.
We can use some of the charting functionality, but also the projections. So we understood in this scenario that if we put £180,000 starting value, and then we add in the £500 that the client is paying in the regular deposits of £500 every month, and then we map that over 20 years. So if we go to November 45, we can then show, right, if you were a medium risk investor, this is what you would end up with potentially after 20 years of investing. And then the difference, if we went high risk, it gets much closer to that £950,000 we discussed that you need in retirement.
Yes. And yeah, the output of this, you can use this report or not, but it basically just shows, a bit about the role of, the advisor in the process, the investment manager in the process, what is a model portfolio service. These are the 3 tax wrappers that we've got. These are our goals: spending, children, and retirement. This is our aggregate risk profile and what it means to be in that risk profile. And then this is the portfolio structure we've gone for. So for that spending goal, we've got cash plus. For the children goal, we've got the 4 seasons portfolio, and for the retirement pot, we've got the growth passive plus portfolio. All in cost for that is 0.35. Risk is in line with where we want it to be, and then any final notes were added in there. So a really tailored solution using the building blocks of model portfolios in a very cost-effective way. If you go to a DFM and get them to build this would be 1.2%. So a really nice way to kind of build that custom solution for a client. And then you get the fact sheets of those 3 portfolios come in at the end. Again, this would all be delivered in the brand of the advisor firm, should you wish. So that's us really, and that's just our way of implementing effectively a goals-based strategy. There are other means and ways, but we are strong proponents of that goals-based approach to investing, with an eye to risk profiling, because you recognise the importance of that in the process. And so, any final questions or musings or thoughts on that?
Appreciate your time, guys, and insights. That was very good. Bang on the money as well with the hour in terms of your timing. So well done on that. For everybody that can hang around and have a conversation, please do so. For anybody that does have to shoot off and leave, thank you again for joining us at the Financial Planning Club and the guys from Aspen. If you do complete your feedback form, there will be a chance for you to get involved with Andrew and the team over at Aspen. So if you do want to hear from them, just let us know on the feedback form and we'll make that happen for you. Any questions, please do fire away and we'll get those answered for you. What I will do is just stop the recording. So guys, thank you very much for another great webinar.
Thanks.